Here we go. Your last and your final argument pro-con analysis on possible counter arguments. This is usually a pretty easy analysis because um, most people who write for the CQ researcher don't include counter arguments. I just want to point this out to you. So again, you're going to read over your con and you are going to identify the counter arguments for each. And I have a little hint here, not every side will give a counter argument. And then you're just going to identify the counter argument, whether it's concession or rebuttal. And then, of course, if there's no counter argument, you say no counter argument given. The semester that Jen and her group did the argument on street gangs, neither Robert Mueller or Beatty provided counter arguments. So it was just issue conclusion and then no counter arguments. You can do something similar. Listen to this video, follow along, pause and play, and just put in your answers with Vandenberg and I forgot the other guy's name. Vandenberg and what's his name? Kurtz, right? So you just put them in here. Okay, so here we go. Again, I'm using the Google Docs viewing because it makes it easier for me to see all my comments on the side, but I will save this as a PDF so that once you've uploaded your answers or submitted your answers, then when I score yours, this is what I will upload in PDF form. So to begin with, Kurtz does not offer any counter arguments, either full or partial. He doesn't try to counter at all the opposite of those who think differently than him, or the opposition, those who think differently than him. So this is a weakness. Arguments are only really complete when we offer counter arguments. Now you may look at this sentence, prohibitions against homeless individuals sleeping on the street do not in themselves end homelessness, as a type of counter argument. What he's doing here is he's conceding a point. He would say to someone like Vandenberg, he'd go, you know what, I agree. These prohibitions don't necessarily end homelessness. So he's conceding a point. Conceding a point is different from a concession because a concession is a true counter argument where you agree with your opposition, but then you take what their reason or evidence is and you turn it on its head. So we're going to say that Kurtz has no counter argument, so it's a weakness. If we come down here and we look at Vandenberg, you'll recall when we went through the reasons, I marked off some sections. I said just ignore these are for later. And these are his partial counter arguments. They're partial because he doesn't do them in the four-step form that is taught to you in the notes and that's in the rubric that you're going to use to build your own. So in this sentence, he says, while camping bans try to render homelessness invisible, they don't address the fact that people sleep outside because they don't have a home. So this first part particular sounds like a partial concession, and that's what it is. It sounds like a partial concession, but what it ends up being instead a partial rebuttal. So it appears, if he's saying that, yeah, it looks like bans don't render, while camping bans try to render them invisible, they don't address the fact that people sleeping outside don't have homes. So I have a note over here. It says, it appears that Vandenberg is taking the opposition's reasons, bans render homeless people invisible, and counter with a rebuttal reason that they don't have a home. He does try to offer a counter argument, which this is a strength. However, it's partial. But what makes it worse is his partial counter argument contains the logical fallacy of what we call a straw man. In other words, people like Kurtz, who argue that bans are effective, have never claimed the purpose of bans is to render homeless people invisible. So in other words, a straw man is when you make stuff up about your opposition, stuff that you say they claim to believe or think or feel or support, when in fact they don't. So that's the first partial counter argument in the form of a rebuttal, or partial rebuttal. His next one is down here at the bottom where he said, instead of tasking already overburdened law enforcement agencies to enforce laws, punishing people for not having housing. They are pursuing evidence-based approaches and they're succeeding. They meaning the people who are successfully helping the homeless. Again, this is another partial argument. It appears to be a rebuttal, as if he's taking the opposition's reasoning that law enforcement agencies are enforcing the laws to punish people for not having housing. I think you can already see where this is going. He does try to offer the counter argument in the form of a rebuttal, but the counter argument once again contains what we call the logical fallacy of a straw man. He's trying to claim that his opposition, like Kurtz and others, are claiming that law enforcement is punishing people for not having housing. And nowhere in the pro side did you read that they're trying to punish these people, and nowhere would the people who are for camping bans say, let's do it to punish the homeless. So again, he's making something up about the opposition. In addition, his partial counter argument has that logical fallacy of evoking negative emotion by using that word punishing, as well as the ambiguity of what does he mean by evidence-based approaches. And I think, of course, what he's alluding to is this example, this case example here, but whether or not that's entirely evidence-based is up for discussion. So just two places, really, that Alec Vandenberg does attempt counter-argument. They're only partial. And unfortunately, both of them contain logical fallacies. So although he has the strength of attempting, he has the weakness of the logical fallacies on top of that. So you can see this is going to be a pretty easy pro-con. It's your last pro-con, so celebrate once you're done with this, and we will talk again soon.